Hi guys, if it's Friday, it's Down and Dirty Woodscraft. Stay with me. Okay, today guys we're going to talk about a little challenge I was faced with this past weekend. Me and some friends went out to Geneva State Forest Lake to camp out for just an impromptu, 2-day type thing. And usually you can go out there and you'll pick up sticks and stuff that it's big forest, right? So around the lake itself, usually you have no problem walking around picking up limbs and getting enough to maintain a small campfire. Well, not this time. I guess they had a group had come through or whatever and the kids had done it, but they had cleaned it out where it was nothing but pine straw and itty bitty nothings, nothing you'd want to build a fire out of other than pine straw. Well, Mr. Chris and I went to looking, and after we had searched around for a while, we found this hunk of a fat lighter log. And what had happened was the tree at some point had been damaged, probably in one of our hurricanes or whatever, and it produced a big burl into the log itself. And when the tree had finally died and it had turned to fat lighter and fell and busted, the rest of the tree was of no use to us. It was like spongy pulp. I mean, you could just grab it up and just twist it and bring it apart like rotten cardboard. But that center burl was. And we were able to kick away the rest of the tree and get that burl out and roll it back to camp. Now the rough shape of this was about, from beginning to end, about 4 feet long, and it was shaped kind of like a guitar, but it was bigger than a guitar, kind of like more like a cello for my more refined friends, or the big bass fiddle for my southern friends. And about that size, it weighed probably 150 pounds, maybe, yeah, around 150 pounds, somewhere along in there. So you're faced with, you've got a big hunk of firewood and no tinder except leaves or straw. That's all you got. Well, we've got to fall back onto the basis of fire. It is, you have 3 elements. Fuel, we've got that. Heat, we will generate that, and oxygen, we've got that. If any of those 3 legs get out of sequence, it collapses. And so I see so many people that struggle when they've got a big hunk of log and they can't seem to get the fire to work, okay? Yes, you've scaled it up and you've got a bigger hunk of firewood, but in doing so, you also have to kind of change the parameters a little bit. So like this stump I've got right here, this big thing, if I was going to burn this stump and I couldn't bust it up, I didn't have the ability, I got to burn this, then I need to make the situation reflect the fuel, okay? So let's let this stand in for my big old cello shaped hunk of firewood. We picked a place nice and clear with plenty of overhead clearance, because remember, this is fat wood. Once it gets going, it's going to produce hot flames, okay? We put it long edge to the incoming wind, and we elevated it slightly by putting a little rock under it. So you've got a little bit of an air gap, maybe an inch or so or a ½ inch or so underneath a large part of the body, okay? Then we took pine straw, and on the uphill side, upwind side, we got it afire and got it to burning and just kept adding pine straw over the top, over the side, all the way around, 360 we kept adding pine straw, because what we're trying to do is heat up the fuel source. Let me say that again. Heat up the fuel source till it reaches the combustion temperature, okay? It's easy for a match to take a small stick and get it to combustion temperature. It's very difficult, the bigger that fuel source gets, to get it to the combustion temperature. Just like a pot of water that you're bringing to a boil. You notice you turn the heat on, depending on how big a pot is, how much water, it takes several minutes to get hot enough, and you'll just start seeing a few bubbles down on the bottom, and slowly it'll warm the entire vessel up until it gets to being a rolling boil. Well, it's the same way with wood. I have to heat this up. Now, we got it going, got it hot, And then we started seeing the first clue, smoke coming off of it. Smoke is unburned combustible gases, okay? Unburned combustible gases that has been forced out of the wood by heat, and yet it was not at the ignition point where it would combust and make flames, see? So we got smoke coming off of it. We kept adding pine straw, kept going. Then we got some flames dappling around it, around the sides, around the edges. Especially on here, up here on the upwind side, we get a few flames going. Keep adding. Now, a tinder like leaves or pine straw doesn't produce a coal. So it produces a lot of heat all at once, and then it dies down quickly, and the remaining ash and embers don't stay there long. So you had to keep an eye on that, because that heat reflective ability, that's another thing. Remember, heat, we must hold heat. So as we got this thing going and actually got some flames going on it, and then it would go out. It would burn for 2 or 3, 4, 5 minutes, and you'd watch this end down here is burning pretty good, and this end would just stop burning, and the flames would, we're losing heat, aren't we? What we did then, once we'd got this whole thing to burn, was we rolled it over. Elevated it so it had about that couple inch gap. Now we put pine straw and got going, and that flame went underneath and ignited it. But now the ground is the heat reflector. The ground is trapping that, and this fire is heating the ground. And that face turned to it is like 2 logs side and side. That's one of the reasons in our keyhole fires we put 2 logs side and side, so they reflect off of each other. Each one is providing heat, reflecting heat to the other, and they burn more efficiently. See? So by turning that one big log now to the ground and keep putting pine straw until we had good flames coming out around it. Once that got going, and this whole process from beginning until we figured it's kind of self-sustaining was about 45 minutes. And it wasn't difficult. We would just watch the pine straw. It would burn down to embers. It would still be a big glowing embers. When that started to go down and it stopped being flame and started being smoke, we would add back pine straw. Sometimes just shaking a handful over the top to flare it back up. Until we got this top hot enough and at the combustible point. The smoke will combust. We're seeing flames. That's when we rolled it over, and once we got it to ignite under there, now the air coming in, we didn't have to put pine straw on the wind side anymore. Now we just put it on the top and the side and got the whole log cooking. After about, say, an hour and a half, this thing was burning all by itself and didn't require any additional pine straw, because since it's elevated off the ground, air's going under, that heat core is sitting there reflecting off the ground back and forth and driving the temperature up. This heat then rolls around the side of the log, helping the outside of the log stay at the combustion point. So we got that one big log to burning. That log burned from about 6 p.m. on Saturday night to we had to extinguish what was left of it, which was a piece about the size of a fiddle or a violin for my northern friends, left at 2 p.m. the next afternoon. So just short of 24 hours. 6 p.m. on Sunday would have been 24 hours, and it was 2, so 4 hours short, so 20 hours out of that one hunk of log of constant fire, flames off of it. You didn't have to feed it, you didn't have to do nothing. We simply had cleared around it 10-15 feet out to make sure there was no chance of the fire spreading. Of course, that's what we were doing while we were gathering up the pine straw to get it going. And whenever we went to bed, it still had a nice, 4, 5, 6 inches of flame going off of it. We got up the next morning, there was still 4, 5, 6 inches of flame, and it had reduced in size about half. but it kept going. With fat wood, it's burning, this is a hunk of fat wood by the way, it's burning the volatile oils, that turpentine that is in the wood. That is the active oil that's in it that the tree has created. That turpentine is a fuel just like gasoline. Through capillary action, just like you and I sweat, it will sweat by heat that out, and only the surface will burn, but it's sweating the volatile gases and the volatile oils from deeper in the wood outward. So in that 150-pound hunk of wood, there was probably 10 gallons, 20 gallons of turpentine if you would have rendered it out. And that's what was burning all night long. Yes, the surface of the wood burns, but sometimes in a really hot fat wood fire, the flames will almost be blue. And if you look at it, the flames will be dancing up here above the surface of the wood. That's where the gases is coming out and actually burning, just like a natural gas stove or whatever. Now, he goes out saying to point out to you, we do not use fat wood to cook on because the smoke that comes off of it is acrid. That means it's kind of bad. And the fact that it'll give food a taste. So yes, this is a great fuel source for light and heating on a cool night in the south. But it would not have been something to cook on like that. But for an all-night campfire that I don't have to tend and keep running out to restoke every 20-30 minutes, it was the way to go. So, to recap, when you've got a big hunk of something like fat wood or another type of combustible log that you're going to have to use, one, heat the entire log. Build fire all the way around it, leaves, whatever, and keep augmenting them until you're seeing a lot of smoke coming off of one area, until you get that to ignite. Once you get that to ignite, roll it to the bottom and have it elevated so you got like 2 or 3 fingers of clearance underneath. Put it on the upwind side, the pine straw or the leaves or whatever, so flames lick up underneath and get it to burning. Once the bottom of it is burning, it will radiate up and consume the rest of the log. If the log's laying there and the top is on fire and there's nothing around it to add it to it, it will go out. Because as the heat burns to here, it can't draft from here, it's just drafting air. You need flames underneath to draft around and keep the log warm and at the combustion point. That's a long-winded discussion, but it's one of them things you don't think about until you're faced with it. And when you do a lot of campfires or you're trying to heat with that, it'll become obvious to it. I've seen this very technique work with big hunks this big in a fireplace before, of getting them in there, getting them up there and getting that log to go, and that'd be the all-night log. So that when they went to bed, it would be consuming, and in the morning when they got up, they still had flames to cook breakfast with. Hope you enjoyed this video, guys. If you have, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button before you go to feed the algorithm. I greatly appreciate it. Till next time, guys, I'm Blackie, wishing you safe journeys. Have a great day, guys.